Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Dr. Whitney Costers, professor of English. And I have to say, in the 20 years that I've been teaching literature at the college level, one thing has been proven time and time again to me, and that is that literature is never just about the past. It's a reflection of who we are today. And some stories, like Kurt Vonnegut's Harrison Bergeron, which we're about to discuss, are eerily relevant and prophetic. Before we start, I want to let you know that if you're new here, my channel offers tons of videos on literary analysis, writing, research, plus full audiobook readings of many of the texts that I discuss, including Harrison Bergeron. You can find that audiobook linked down below. So if you enjoy content that makes you think about language, about society, about what stories are really saying, I would love for you to subscribe and be part of this growing community. And as we go, I would love to hear your thoughts on this story. What do you think Harrison Bergeron is warning us about? Do you see echoes of it in the world right now? Let me know in the comments. So Harrison Bergeron may be short on the page, but it lingers in your mind, in your gut, and your heart long after you've finished the reading. Published in 1961 at the height of the Cold War anxieties and amid the rise of American mass culture and media, the story offers a bleak dystopian vision of the year 2081. In this imagined future, the government has achieved what many might think of as a utopia, complete and total equality. But Vonnegut flips that idea on its head. In this world, equality doesn't mean opportunity or fairness. It means sameness. And sameness, in Vonnegut's rendering, is brutal. The premise is deceptively simple. To ensure that no one is better than anyone in any capacity, the United States government enforces a strict system of handicaps. If you're intelligent, you're forced to wear a mental handicap device, essentially a little earpiece that blasts random jarring noises at intervals to disrupt your thoughts. If you're strong, you wear weights around your neck or your body to slow you down. If you're beautiful, you're required to wear a mask. Graceful, you'll be hobbled. Articulate, you'll be forced to squawk like a goose. And this is all enforced by the ironically named handicapper General Diana Moon Glampers, who functions as the bureaucratic muscle behind the regime. Now, the story centers on George and Hazel Bergeron, whose son Harrison has been imprisoned for essentially just being too extraordinary. George is intelligent and wears his mental handicap dutifully. Hazel, by contrast, is what the government might call perfectly average. She's not very bright, not particularly curious, not burdened by memory or imagination. They sit together watching television, a symbolic and literal stand-in for how society has become pacified and docile. Most of the story's action unfolds on the TV screen that they're watching, which is itself a sharp commentary on how media shapes not just what we see, but how we think and whether we think at all. Does that sound like anything you know and see today? Vonnegut's use of sound in this story is one of the most striking literary devices he employs. As George tries to think about the world around him, about his son, about the absurdity of the laws he's obeying, he's constantly interrupted by these sudden bursts of noise. A buzzer, the sound of glass shattering, gunfire, a car crash. These aren't just physical interruptions. They're symbolic of something much deeper, the erasure of independent thought. The government in this world has found a way to suppress not just what people say, but what they even have the capacity to consider. And the sounds grow more violent as the story progresses, mirroring both the rising tension and the brutality of the state. And then there's Harrison. Harrison Bergeron is just 14 years old. He's described as 7 feet tall, physically stunning, intellectually gifted, and impossibly strong. In other words, he's everything the regime fears. When he escapes from prison and storms a television studio, interrupting a broadcast, it's an act of rebellion that feels almost mythic. He declares himself emperor, strips off his handicaps, selects one of the ballerinas who's also handicapped on air, and removes her weight and masks. Together, they rise and dance in defiance of gravity, law, and the limitations of their society. But the rebellion is short-lived. Diana Moon Glampers enters the studio, pulls out a shotgun, and kills them both. Just like that. No hesitation, no trial, no outrage, just the cold efficiency of authoritarian power in action. And what's so deeply chilling and so brilliantly crafted is that George and Hazel, Harrison's own parents, can't really process what's happened. Hazel cries a little bit, but she forgets why. George's thoughts are scattered by a new burst of noise in his head. Their son has just been executed on live TV and they feel nothing. Not because they don't care, but because they literally can't hold on to the thought long enough to grieve. This moment is where Vonnegut's satire becomes truly tragic. It's funny in that dark, absurdist way, typical of Vonnegut's humor. But the laughter curdles. We laugh maybe at Hazel's simplicity, at the absurdity of a world where beauty is punished, but then we realize we're not that far from it. This isn't just a dystopia, it's a mirror, distorted just enough to feel fictional. Now here's why we need to bring this conversation into 2025. Vonnegut was writing about television, about a passive, centralized medium that broadcast a single narrative to a compliant public. But in 2025, we live in a media environment that is not passive, but interactive, algorithmically curated, and addictive by design. The role TV played in Vonnegut's story as a tool of sedation and propaganda has now been absorbed and amplified by social media. And unlike television, which delivered the same program to everyone, social media tailors the story to each individual user. That tailoring is not liberating. It's isolating. What do you think? In Vonnegut's world, the mental handicap device interrupted George's thought with static and noise. Today, that noise is push notifications, doom scrolling, trending topics, and the constant pressure to perform, post, and react. Every app on your phone is designed to capture your attention and monetize your outrage or your boredom. What Vonnegut could only guess at in the 60s, we now arguably live in full color. Social media doesn't just distract us, it shapes our entire worldview. It filters what we see and, more frighteningly, what we don't see. We are now subject to something far more insidious than Diana Moon-Glamper's government mandates. In 2025, our sense of reality is increasingly shaped by algorithms that no one individual controls. These systems decide what gets boosted, what gets buried, who gets heard, and who gets ignored. If Harrison Bergeron were alive in 2025, he wouldn't need to be shot on live TV. He'd simply be deplatformed, shadow banned, canceled, or labeled a conspiracy theorist. And if he did manage to go viral, the conversation around him could easily be hijacked, polarized, or swallowed by 1,000 competing interpretations. His rebellion would be a trending hashtag for a few hours, then forgotten in favor of the next outrage cycle. And let's think about misinformation. We live in a world now where artificial intelligence can generate fake news articles, fake video footage, even fake faces. The line between reality and narrative is becoming harder to distinguish by the day. Vonnegut's fear was that people would be told lies until they couldn't think straight. Our reality is that we are shown lies until we no longer trust what we see, or worse, until we no longer care whether it's true or not. Now, Hazel and George forget what they just saw because of mental conditioning. We forget because we're overloaded with content. We forget because we're exhausted. We forget because we've been trained by media, by platforms, by endless scrolling to move on before anything can settle into our long-term memories. We are living in the age of algorithmic amnesia. Vonnegut's media critique in Harrison Bergeron is no longer hypothetical. It's prophetic. In 2025, the dystopia is no longer enforced by a single government official wielding a shotgun. It's enforced by 1 billion notifications, by digital dopamine loops, by content designed to enrage and pacify us in equal measure. And most terrifying of all, we are willing participants in this system. We check the apps, we scroll the feeds, we embrace the noise. So the question becomes, if Harrison Bergeron were to rise up in 2025, would we even notice? Would we believe it was real? Would we care for more than a few seconds before the next video autoplayed? This, I think, is the central warning of Vonnegut's story as we experience it now. Not just that authoritarian systems might erase our individuality, but that we might collaborate in our own erasure, happily, through a like button, a meme, a filtered image, or a shared illusion of connection. Some have argued that Vonnegut was warning us about the dangers of political correctness or liberal egalitarianism, but I'm not so sure. I don't think he's attacking the left or right. He's attacking extremism. What he's critiquing is any ideology, any system that values conformity over individuality, and that is willing to use force, whether literal, rhetorical, or technological, to enforce sameness. And then there's Hazel's line, probably the most chilling in the story. "I think I'd make a good handicapper general," she says with complete sincerity. And George replies, "Good as anybody else." It's funny and terrifying. Hazel, who can't remember anything for more than a minute, who has no real understanding of the world, who just suggested that the government should add soothing Sunday church chimes to mental handicaps, it's this woman who thinks she should run the most powerful agency in the country? And George, dulled by constant noise, just agrees. This is where Vonnegut's satire lands its hardest punch. The real danger isn't just the state. It's the average citizen who supports it out of ignorance or inertia. It's the idea that being normal is enough qualification for power. Vonnegut is warning us not just about tyrants, but about banality, about how ordinary people in the name of fairness can become complicit in systems of cruelty. He's showing us how easily democracy can slide into despotism, not with jackboots and gulags, but with legislation, television, and now, today, algorithmic echo chambers and the viral spread of fear dressed up as entertainment. Let's circle back to Harrison. He's a heroic figure, brave, bold, defiant, but also absurdly exaggerated. 7 feet tall, perfectly proportioned. His proclamations are theatrical. He declares himself emperor. There's something over the top, almost self-parroting about his rebellion. And that's the point. Harrison isn't meant to be a realistic revolutionary. He's a metaphor, a last flicker of what's possible when human potential is unchained. But Vonnegut doesn't let us live in that moment for long. Harrison is killed immediately, and the story ends not with a call to arms, but with forgetfulness. The revolution disappears into static. In the end, Harrison Bergeron is a warning, but not a simple one. It warns us about what happens when we try to flatten society into a perfectly equal mold, when we trade liberty for comfort, when we erase difference in the name of fairness. But it also warns us about apathy, about media that entertains us into submission, about technology that fragments our thoughts, about systems that reward mediocrity and punish brilliance. It asks us to consider what kind of equality we really want and what kind of cost we're willing to pay for it. So maybe Vonnegut wasn't trying to give us a map. Maybe he was holding up a mirror. And maybe the real question isn't just what this story is warning us about, but how we're choosing to respond. Because as we've seen, control doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it comes through convenience, through distraction, through stories that are designed to soothe us or shape us without us even noticing. As always, let's start a discussion down below, because really, what is literature without dialogue and reflection? I would love to hear your thoughts on what I've just said. As always, be well.